Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Concise webinar. This webinar is on planning your new website. My name is Richard Keeves, and I'd also like to introduce you to my friend, colleague, and co-director at Concise Digital, Gareth Lane.
This is me. More compliments than usual. Happy to be here, and any input I can offer in this, I will be. So back to you.
Thank you. Okay, cheers. Thank you for coming along. There are a number of people here today and you may not have been to one of these Concise webinars before. We do try to keep these 100% educational. This is not about sales pitches. This is about information you can use, and hopefully this is going to be helpful for you. That's our intention. The session is being recorded. You're very welcome to ask questions as we go along, and there'll also be some time at the end for live Q&A. We do the questions through the chat. So if you've got if you can see the chat facility there on your screen, you feel free to ask questions as we go along through chat. And as I mentioned, this is being recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel and also on the Concise website a little later today or tomorrow. So this is about planning your new website. And one of the questions that we get a lot is, how much should a website cost? How much does a website cost? And the obvious kind of question is, after that, how do you get one? How do you get a good website? So before we get into the cost and also how you get a good website, there's a quote that I came across many years ago, it turns out, from a guy called John Ruskin. And this is what Ruskin called the law of business. And I'd just like to take a minute to read this, because this kind of sets the scene for how we see things, or how, and also the things that you've got to be careful about. There is hardly anything in the world that someone cannot make a little worse and sell a little cheaper, and the people who consider price alone are that person's lawful prey. It is unwise to pay too much, but it is also unwise to pay too little. When you pay too much, you lose a little money, that is all. When you pay too little, you sometimes lose everything, because the thing you bought is incapable of doing the thing you bought it to do. The common law of business balance prohibits paying a little and getting a lot. It can't be done. If you deal with the lowest bidder, it is well to add something for the risk you run. And if you do that, you will have enough to pay for something better. So that applies to pretty much everything in the world, I reckon, as far as my experience of buying things, and it most definitely applies to websites. It's unwise to pay too little, and it's unnecessary and unwise to pay too much. So with that in mind, what does a good website cost, and how do you get one? So we're going to come to the question of cost a little later, but in terms of planning a website, there are some key questions to think through first. I've got to say that Gareth's been working with websites for 15 years. I've been working with websites for 25 years. We've got other director, Malcolm, who's similarly for 20 years. And this is invariably true, that a lot of people think it's just about their website. But for a business website, it's actually about the business first. So don't focus on the website first, focus on your business first, and then think about what the website needs to have in order to deliver on your business. And so there are 6 questions that we like to stress, and these are in order, but just to focus on them, 6 business questions that we say must come first when you're planning a new website. What is the question 1? What is the purpose of your business? Why does your business exist? What are its values? What do you stand for? What will you not stand for? It's really important to get clear on that. If you're starting a new business, then you've probably got these sort of things swirling around in your mind. You may have written them down. But if you're running a business that's been around for 5 or 10 or whatever years, and now you're planning a new website, think through, go back to basics, or go back to what helped you start the business, and get clear on these before you start building the website. So purpose and values. Then the next point that I talk about is greatness. What can your business be great at? There's no point, especially on the web these days, there's no point in being mediocre or average. If you're just going to be okay, then you may not succeed in this world today. especially trying to sell things online. So what can you be great at? And the question 3 about uniqueness. What is it that makes your business different and special? Ideally unique. You need to think about that and understand that those points about uniqueness and specialness need to come through in your website. But before you can bring them through in your website, you've actually got to get clear on them in your own mind about your business to say, what is it that we do really well? Why are we different? How are we different? And then the question 4, the ideal customers. Who is your target market? What customers are you aiming for? What customers do you want? Who do you not want? It's okay to not want everybody as your customer. It's okay. It's really clever and good to know exactly who you are wanting and then figure out what you need to do to attract them. So the benefits, what real pains or problems do you solve? What are the benefits to your customers? And promises. What promises does your business make? What must the website do? What must you deliver? And also the points there about you've got to be clear about this. The more specific you are, the better. There's no point in kidding yourself. So be honest with your feedback and your thoughts about this. And ideally, put it down in writing so you've got some clarity about your business. Now, you might say, well, hang on, I thought we were talking about planning a website. Yes, we are. The business questions have to come first. Otherwise, you will have drama when you're trying to explain your business on your website. So once you've got
Can I
those
jump
business
in there,
questions,
Richard?
absolutely.
Thanks. So one of the reasons for these questions is to help a prospective web designer or web developer or web builder, whoever it is involved in your new website, to get a real good understanding of your business and what's going to make a difference for you. Because you can pick a website, you can build a website, but if you sort of get the wrong idea about the business and you get the wrong idea about a customer, you end up building a website that's not fit for purpose. And then I often find that people have their first website and then they might have their second website. And then it's really not until they've had their sort of third or fourth website that they really start to know what it is that makes the phone ring or the sales convert, because they've really sort of learned about their customer and know their business. So the more you can do at the beginning to really think about who your customers are, who your competitors are, what you're trying to do with your website, what your points of difference are, then you'll find you'll get a much better end result.
Excellent.
Back to you.
No, cool. Very good. So once you've thought about the business, then start thinking about the website and what the website needs to have. So here are some questions to think about this. The first one is to get very clear on what is the purpose of your site. And there are 6 kind of general core purposes that we find websites typically have. Either making online sales or trying to attract customers into a retail store, for example, generating leads, building credibility, providing information, or providing customer service. So, and you can do different bits of that. Like, in other words, you can have more than one purpose for your website. So get clear on what it is your purpose actually is, and then make sure you convey that to yourself first, and whoever's going to be building the website, to say, this is the purpose of the site. This is what it must achieve. And this is why we're having the site. So the point 2 there about benchmarks. Who are the benchmarks that you want to compare to? Who are your competitors? What are some similar sites that you like the look of, that you like the layout of, that you kind of admire, that you think, I'd like to have something as good or better, ideally, than those sites? Obviously, you want to be better than your competitors. Some of your competitors may be mega corps, mega businesses with huge budgets, and you may not be able to be better than them with the website, but you can pick off a part of what you can do better and be great at, and focus in on doing that really well. So, and this is again going back to those first key questions. And then the point 3 there, functionality. What is it that the website's going to do? What will users want? What will they expect when they come to your site? What is it that you must provide? What is it that you want to provide for your business as well? So these are questions to do with the website. Now, point 4, about engagement. So what is it that's going to make your site engaging to people, right? How do you make sure that the design is making the site engaging? How do you make sure the content is? How do you make sure the site is going to be usable? Do you have to think about having the mobile first focus so that most people who come to your website are on a mobile device? if that's the case, and it often is, in fact, it is with most websites these days, most website visitors or most visitors to websites do so on mobile devices. And so these days, and I say that with 25 years background where it wasn't the case up until about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Google said, hey, there's more people coming to websites on mobile devices than there are on desktops. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So now it's about thinking, okay, let's make sure the site works really well on mobile, and it also has to work well on desktop, but often a mobile first focus is really important. So to make the site engaging. How at the point 5 there, SEO and visibility. How are people going to find you? There's no point in having a website if people don't know it exists, and if you can't tell them, and if they can't find it in Google. And so how are people going to find you? What are they going to be looking for when they search for you? And we call that their search intent. What is it that they are looking for when they search for the sorts of products or services that you provide? And also for your business, if they search for your business, how are they going to do that? And are they going to find you? And how will they find you? Are they going to be searching on a mobile device and needing to find you on a Google map? In which case, you don't actually have to have your website for that. You can do that with Google Maps, but you can include your website within the Google Maps facility. So there's lots of things to sort of think through. Point 6, conversions, metrics, and KPIs. This is about outcomes. What do you actually want as a result of somebody coming onto your website? What's the outcome you want? How are you going to get people who come to your website to take action? How are you going to convert them? So with websites, we talk about calls to action. You may see the acronym CTA. That stands for call to action. And so different buttons, different forms, different facilities on the website will be there as calls to action. And you want people not just to go to the website and then leave or bounce. Another word for bounce is kind of bugger off. We don't want them to do that. What you want them to do is click on something and go deeper into your site, find exactly what they're looking for, and ideally buy something from you either then and there or later on. So how are you going to measure these conversions? And this calls for a lot of thought and also an understanding of what it is you want to achieve. So now I've sort of thought about some of those things. Then now's a good time to think, okay, there's also a technology component. This is stating the obvious, but a lot of people think that the technology is the most important part. It's not. Getting the business thoughts right first and getting the other components we've just talked about, how to make your site found easily, engaging, and convert, are far more important than your choice of technology. The technology is there to support it all. So this is why but it's still an important consideration. And with websites, we talk about content management systems and e-commerce platforms. And so what content management system or platform is going to be best for you? This is where you need to take or either listen to people who are your friends who've got similar sites and find out what they used and what they're happy with and what worked well, or listen to people who build websites for a living and understand, and who you can trust, and then find out what they recommend. At Concise, we typically build websites in WordPress, PrestaShop, or Shopify. And we also use Laravel as a custom framework for building things that need to be built in a unique way. WordPress is an open source content management system that's got lots of things that can plug into it. A few years ago, and I think it's probably similar now, 20% of the world's websites were built using WordPress. WordPress is a pretty good system as long as it's kept up to date and hosted well. If it's not, then it can have lots of security holes. And so one of the problems with WordPress are sites that are not kept up to date from a security updating and maintenance perspective. PrestaShop is an enterprise grade e-commerce system that again is open source, which means you don't have to pay for the software that you use to build the website. Laravel is a framework that allows websites to be built really quickly and very complex. Complex things can be built very quickly. And the SaaS, software as a service platform, Shopify, is a hosted e-commerce solution that is pretty good for lots of e-commerce online store applications. And so there are other systems as well, BigCommerce, Magento, I could rattle off a whole bunch, but we can't be experts in everything. We don't want to be. We focus in on the things that we know are really good and allow us to build good, cost-effective websites for the sorts of budgets and requirements that most of our clients have. And that we work with small to medium-sized businesses. We've got some very big businesses as well who are very big business clients, and who are doing literally millions of dollars and using these sorts of systems. The point is, second point, what third-party integrations are important or mission critical? It's not just about, these days, websites are not just about your website being hosted somewhere and existing in isolation to your business. Your website actually needs to be considered as part of your business. Now, that kind of conceptually may make sense, but then you think about it, think, okay, what does that actually mean? Well, the website can integrate with other business systems that you use. And in fact, I would say it actually needs to integrate with other business systems that you use. Otherwise, it's just kind of sitting out there as a brochure for your business. If you want functionality that's going to be really useful for your client, for your customers, and people who are maybe your suppliers and your stakeholders, shareholders, whatever they might be, then make sure that the website integrates with the business systems that you use and that your customers are likely to want to use when they come to your website. This might be your CRM, your customer relationship management system. It may be all sorts of things, your accounting system, Xero, Triumph. It may be an inventory management system such as Retail Express, or a POS system. And there are also systems that you can get to plug in reviews that may be collected at other parts of the internet and displayed on your website. So there's lots of third-party integrations that you can include. And one of the things that I'm really proud to say at Concise we are seriously good at is integrating different systems with websites. And it's other web companies are good at that as well, but not all. I got to tell you, not all. And we do a lot of third-party integrations. Of course, you don't butt in, you add.
I can add. Okay, I'll add some comments. So I think one of the sort of things where a lot of people go wrong with websites and briefing, particularly in the past, is that the client has sort of decided what they want as the platform rather than ask the web developers to suggest the best platform. So my advice is always that the client should specify what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve and what the functionality requirements are, and then let the web agency suggest the best platform for use. Because, for example, if you use Shopify, it's a great tool and really good for lots of business cases, but as soon as you start getting a little bit outside of the box and have a few more difficult technical requirements, Shopify can become very difficult and very frustrating to work with. And so sometimes if those functionality requirements are outlined at the beginning, then a good web agency can tell you at the beginning that Shopify is not going to work for XYZ reason. And so instead you should be running down a different path, perhaps using Laravel or WordPress or one of those. So I always think that's a good point. I always have a bit of a sense check with new clients if they ask me, they tell me the software rather than ask me what the software is. That's good advice.
Yes, very good advice. Okay, so that's some pointers there, and also the last point there about is the bank. Are you going to be needing to integrate payments? How are you going to do that? And so there's a few things to think through from technology perspective. One of the things that I would like to share in this webinar is one of our tips for turning ideas into reality. And I developed a few years ago, in fact, it's quite a few years ago now, a bit of a model, because I tried to figure out why it is that some plans and why some things go off track, and why some business ideas just don't get traction, or and it goes to websites as well, where some websites just don't get built properly. And what had occurred to me is that there are different stages in the planning process, and you actually need to have them all and not skip out on any. And so this particular model, I'll explain how it works. This model starts with someone who's the visionary, and in the world of the websites, this visionary is normally the business owner, the person who's got an idea or a business, and they say, here's what I'd like to be achieving. Here's what I want to achieve. And so the visionary provides the ideas, But the visionary needs to have the ideas be able to be translated into something that makes sense. And so the visionary needs to pass their ideas onto someone who, for the purpose of this model, we call an architect. And the architect turns the ideas into plans and then passes the plans onto somebody who is the builder. And the builder then needs to think through the plans and turn those plans into tasks, and then passes different tasks on to different tradies who then work on the tasks in a coordinated way to help build whatever it is that's being built, and to then help achieve what the architect had in mind, and hopefully ideally what the visionary, what the person had in mind. This is whether you're building a house, or I would also say whether you're building a website, and lots of other things as well. So you actually need to have somebody who can convert ideas into plans, and then have somebody who can do something with those plans. Where things go wrong is when the visionary starts talking directly to the tradie, trying to get the tradie to understand where to lay that brick or where to do that bit of coding. And the tradie says, I don't even know what you're talking about, mate. I just need a very clear task, and then I'll do it. But I can't cope with an unformed idea. And this happens so often. And so where things go off track is where visionaries talk to the tradies. Now, this is in no way meant to be derogatory to tradies. In our business and in web companies, the tradies are the web specialists and web designers, graphic designers, programmers, SEO strategists, writers, editors, QA testers. All of these people form part of the team that help build the website. So for the purpose, like if you're building a house, you've got plumbers, bricklayers, painters, I don't know, plasterers, whatever else. But for web companies, the web specialists need to do these work. The architect takes the idea from the visionary, creates the plan. Now, the plan may be in the form of a website brief. For a complex system, it may be something called a solution architecture plan. And also, ideally, at that point of thinking about the business and the issues, is to develop a digital marketing plan. To then be able to say, okay, so once you get your website up, then it's a case of making sure that you achieve your marketing outcomes. Let's make sure we build in those the things that are required into the website as part of the marketing plan. For example, the calls to action, forms, how people are going to respond, how you're going to interact with them, and a bunch of other things. So for the purposes of the model, think about the need for a visionary to talk to somebody, and ideally that person, let's call him the architect. The architect turns the ideas into plans and passes them on to the builder, and the builder needs to get the tasks done. So the problems happen when you don't have clear plans. And the next problem is that when different people, like when the visionary starts talking to the tradies, they actually talk different languages. They have different mindsets, they have different languages, and they don't understand each other. This is based on my experience, and for web companies are notorious. If you have a client who wants to come in and sit over the shop, try to talk to a programmer, they actually end up confusing each other. So you've got to make sure you get the right people on the team, get the right team doing your work, get a good architect to translate the vision into good plans. And also make sure that when you're choosing your team, you choose a team that has the ability to do what you need it to do. Word of mouth recommendations are always good, but make sure also that you check references. If someone says, okay, these are some sites I did for these 3 clients, then ring them up. Say, how did you find that experience? How was it? What did you learn? What went right? What went not right? Okay, so enough on that. Hopefully you got the concept. You can rewatch the video or talk later on if you want about that, or please ask any questions. So now we're moving on, going a little bit over time here, but almost done. So the question now goes to, how much is enough? What's the budget? How much do good websites cost? And the point here is that for us and for most web companies, it's about time. It's about how much does the company or does the hourly rate cost, and how many hours is it going to take? Some web companies charge additional fees for whatever reason, but at Concise we don't. We charge an hourly rate, and it's based on $110 an hour plus GST. So if a website's going to take 50 hours, then it's roughly a $5,000 project or a $5,000 development. So let's give you some idea. A very simple website could be built, for example, in about maybe 10 hours. A good basic WordPress website might take between 30 and 60 hours. Again, these are rough. We can build a good website in WordPress for 20 hours, but someone else may come along and want something a bit more fancy, and it may take 80 hours. So these are ballparks. So a Shopify store you potentially could get a Shopify store built in 20 to 30 hours. It may take more, and it wouldn't be unusual for a Shopify store to need 50 to 80 hours worth of work done, especially if there's complex design work and there's a lot of thinking through how the product structure is going to work and various other aspects, because the Shopify looks like it's a low cost thing to get into. You can buy Shopify for $29 a month, and you can set up a Shopify store yourself. But when you decide you need to do something that's a little bit out of not exactly what is being planned within the theme that you might have got, then it takes a little bit of time from people who know what they're doing. And I'm very pleased to say we do lots of Shopify work, and we do know what we're doing. So this gives you an idea about hours. A big website could be 200 hours to 1,000 hours. Could be. I mean, we don't have too many websites these days, but a few years ago, when everything had to be custom built, when there were no WordPresses and there were no Shopifys, we had to build e-commerce systems, and it wasn't unusual for an e-commerce system to cost about 50 grand, for example, for an online shop. And these days, you can get the same functionality for nothing because it comes to you with WordPress. And so you might be able to set up that for $5,000 now. So back 20 years ago, we would have custom built an e-commerce store, just to reiterate my point, and it might have cost between 20 and 50 grand. And you can now get that functionality out of a box, already built, open source, and you could deploy the whole thing, set it up for maybe $5,000. So that gives you an idea how things have moved, and it's really interesting to kind of have the perspective to say, hey, you get far better value these days, but it's still about making sure you get things working for your business. Okay, so the next point I just want to raise, and Gareth's going to talk about this one. Some web companies work with try to give you fixed prices. Other companies, and Concise is one of these other companies, gives you ballparks and estimated prices. So Gareth, give us your thoughts on this.
Sure. So and this came out of a personal experience a long time ago. Concise did used to do fixed pricing, and we used to say, "Oh, we'll build you a website for $2,000, or we'll build you a website for $5,000." And what unfortunately happened is that a lot of the jobs just evolve, and you get something called scope creep, where what you thought you were doing at the beginning then turns into something else, and then if a website project goes over a fixed price budget, then the agency always kind of feels left out, and then sort of loses interest and goes, well, I can't afford to do any more work on this if you're not going to pay any more because we've already exceeded our budget. And so you kind of lose out, the agency loses out, and then the client feels a bit grumpy because they being asked to pay more than they thought, and so on. And then the vice versa is if a fixed price is over priced, so say the website they agree to $5,000, but really it was only a $2,000. The agency kind of rubs their hands together and goes, oh, we're happy, and then the client then finds out 6 months later that they paid $3,000 too much, and then the client gets really pissed off, and then they end up going somewhere else. So I don't believe fixed pricing really works for web development for either the client or the agency. Basically, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, but it doesn't make for a good long-term relationship, and you really need a good long-term relationship with your web developer, because you're pretty much in their hands for anything to do with your website, particularly if it's e-commerce. You're going to need their hands. So the primary thing should always be have a good working relationship with your web team. I'm not saying that just because we an hourly rate. I'm saying it because we did do it the other way for a long time, and we made the decision about 10 years ago to change the model to be an hourly rate service. And so that basically if we do some work for you, then you'll pay. And I think that is a much healthier way of working with a client. The clients always know where they stand. They always know that if they are going to have some more work done, they know that there's going to be an hour. Of course, you need to have a trust and transparent relationship with your web agency. So if you are going to use someone on an hourly rate service, then make sure you get some time logs or some detailed timing. Make sure you know what you're paying for with time. Some agencies will charge you for project management time, others won't. So if you are paying an hourly rate, just make sure you know exactly what that hour includes and how it's calculated. And if you are going for a fixed price, you need to be really, 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 really clear with the inclusions right at the beginning, and make sure that everything is put up front. Particularly large projects are extremely difficult to put fixed prices on because there's so many unknowns. And so you would always want to find out what happens if the fixed price, what happens to the fixed price if the scope changes. I would be highly surprised if any web agency can just do it all in one price, no matter how many things change. If they can, it means that there's a lot of fat already built into it, or there might be a business that may be going broke.
Yeah. And so the thing with fixed, that's really good summary there, Gareth. I think the thing with getting a fixed price is that the person who gives you a fixed price will generally / always build in a margin that covers their risk if things take a little longer than they thought. And so the question then is, how much of a margin is being added in that may never get used? You may feel more comfortable with a fixed price, but you may also be paying far more than you need to have one. And as Gareth just mentioned, if the scope changes or if the requirements change, then you can end up paying more. In fact, we came across just a few months ago now somebody who'd spent 20 grand getting a WordPress website built. They were charged 20 grand, which they didn't know any different at the time, and they paid their 20 grand. And the things didn't go very well. And we realized when we spoke to them, or they came to talk to us, is that we could have built the same thing. I think it was for like 3 grand, I think, Gareth. It was something like that. And we just sort of talked about how there's there's a lot of businesses a lot of web companies who don't necessarily always do the right thing. Anyway, so think about that. That's one of the questions about getting estimated prices, and fixed prices can work against you. If it's a simple system and someone says I can build that for $1,000 and they know exactly what they're building, and then maybe that's just fine. But something more complicated, be very careful. In fact, let's look at this next point, why some projects go off track. And the first one is, I think, and again, this is just a reality, that sometimes there's a poor choice of the web team, and the relationship between the web company and the client is just not a great fit. And so you need to find someone, or you need to find just as the agency, the web agency needs to do, they need to make sure that they take on business that they can deliver on their promises. The client also needs, obviously, to make sure that it's a good selection. Unrealistic expectations is something that generally will help projects go off track. Unclear explanations, poor plans, delays in the client providing content is something that holds websites up. In fact, it's probably the biggest delaying factor for websites, is getting the content together. Often the client says, I'll supply all the content, and web company builds the website, waits around for the client to supply the content, and the client says, oh, okay, I better get onto that now. And then 3 months later, they still haven't got onto it. And so things can get delayed, and one of the reasons is content. Changes to spec, changes to scope, changes at the start to the staff at the client's business, it often can help make things go off track. If somebody is in charge of running the website project for that particular business, for the client business, and that person leaves and it gets handballed to someone else, projects go off track a lot when that happens. So be careful who's taking the responsibility for the project. And also the other thing is, we talk about website projects, and for a while I've sort of thought we need better language around this. Website projects imply that there is a start and a stop to the project. And really, there is, as far as the development aspect is concerned. But once the site is developed and launched, it then moves into a whole different phase. It's not the end of the website project, it's the next phase of the website project. The build is finished, but the ongoing marketing, updating, maintenance of the website and improvement, enhancement of the website then really needs to continue on. And so the website really is never finished, which is kind of interesting, and it's a bit scary for some clients, but the website is a living, breathing thing, or at least it needs to be. It's part of the business and it needs to be treated that way. So that has been a quick rip through of how to get a good website. And I guess in summary, think about making sure that you've got a good understanding of your business to start with, understand what the website needs to have, be able to explain that to people who can convert your ideas into plans that make sense, work with a team that can deliver on those plans, and make sure that you are managing the process within the time and the resources that you've got available to you. Really happy to take any questions now. I'm sorry, I've yapped on a bit too much, and so I'm sorry this has gone a little longer. Hopefully it's been helpful. But if you've got any questions, now's a great time to pop them in the chat. Gareth, is there anything you want to add before we wrap?
No, I think it was a really great summary, and a few little hints about Concise, but it's only because of the way that we've done it. And I think we're very fortunate that we've been in this industry quite a long time. I think Richard's probably one of the oldest people in the industry with the most experience. I'm probably the oldest young guy in the industry, particularly in WA. So I think between us, we've probably done something like 100,000 website projects. I mean, we've done 50,000 in 15 years. So I think chucking a few more for you, Richard. And I think there's a lot of experience added up there and a lot of learnings. And I always just say to clients, I'm more than happy to get a web agency do a sense check on another web agency's quote. There are some sharks. Unfortunately, we are in an industry that is unregulated, and there's no standard, and there's no sort of ASIC or governing body that sits above us. So it is a little bit of a cowboy industry in some respects. But I think the ultimate advice we can always provide to people is find someone that you like and trust. Make sure that you're happy with their terms. Make sure that there's no hidden T's and C's. And if things change, which always do with websites, no website has ever gone live the first time with exactly what the client wanted in the first place. It always evolves. So make sure that if you do sign up for a fixed price or a package deal or something like that, you're aware of what you're getting and not getting, so that you can be prepared. Otherwise, I think
good stuff.
Great info.
Okay, thanks everybody. There are more webinars coming up, and we'll tell you about those as we go along. Hope this has been a good session. Look forward to your feedback. If you want any help with any of this, please let us know. And on behalf of him and me, thank you very much for coming along today. If you've got any questions, we won't go on now, but if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, and we're happy to help in any way we can. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.